Hey guys, welcome back. Today, I got the June Radiance Films US subscription update. Again, this time we're looking at exactly what came with the subscription, and this time it's a little bit different. We got 2 French films and an issue of the Dirty Art House magazine that Radiance occasionally throws in for its members. It's actually the first magazine that I've received from them this year. Everything arrived in the standard cardboard mailer with tracking updates as usual, although it showed up a little bit later in the month than some previous shipments. And for anybody watching in the US, Radiance once again partnered with Barnes & Noble for their 50% off sale, which is running through August 2nd, making it a pretty good time to jump into the label if you've been curious. So what's interesting about this month's films is that both films are tied to Jean-Pierre Mocky, one as a writer and actor, and the other with Mocky stepping into the lead role almost a decade later. So there's almost a mini retrospective feel to this month's selections. Let's take a look. First up is La Tête contre le mur, which translates roughly to Head Against the Wall. This is a feature debut of Georges Franju, and if that name sounds familiar, he's probably best known for Eyes Without a Face, one of the great French horror films. But this isn't horror. Instead, it's a drama set largely inside a psychiatric institution, following a rebellious young man who finds himself committed against his will after clashing with his wealthy father. What makes the film interesting is that it really isn't about mental illness as much as it is about conformity, authority, and the way institutions can strip people of their individuality. From what I read, it was pretty bold for its time for the way that it portrayed psychiatric care and the treatment of patients. Franju was known for blending realism with an almost dreamlike quality, and that seems to be present here as well. Even before Eyes Without a Face, he had a reputation for bringing a poetic visual style to darker subject matter. If you're trying to picture what this might feel like, think somewhere between One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and some of the more humanistic French dramas of the era. As for the release itself, the biggest draw is its new 4K restoration, along with archival interviews featuring Franju, Charles Aznavour, and Jean-Pierre Mocky, giving some first-hand insight into the film's production and legacy. And honestly, this again feels like a very Radiance title. It's the kind of important, influential film that isn't necessarily talked about every day, but absolutely deserves to be rediscovered by modern audiences. Next up is Solo. This one immediately caught my attention because the premise sounds right up my alley. The film follows a violinist and petty criminal who discovers his younger brother has become involved with a violent revolutionary group. What starts as a personal mission to save his brother gradually pulls him into a much larger world of political unrest and social anger. By this point, Jean-Pierre Mocky wasn't just involved behind the scenes. He's front and center as the lead actor, and the film apparently reflects a lot of the frustration and uncertainty that existed in France following the protest and upheaval in the 1960s. One thing I always found interesting about Mocky is how difficult he is to categorize. He moved between satire, crime films, dark comedy, and political commentary, often blending all those elements together. From everything I read, Solo sounds like one of his most personal and politically charged works. If I had to compare it to something, it sounds like a mix of a French crime thriller and the paranoia-driven political films that came out in America in the 1970s. Maybe something in the neighborhood of The Friends of Eddie Coyle, The Parallax View, or maybe even some of the more cynical Jean-Pierre Melville crime films. Feature-wise, once again, the restoration is probably the headline attraction, but the archival Mocky interviews look especially valuable considering how important he was to the film. And as for why Radiance would include it, this is exactly the type of international cinema that they've built their reputation on. It's a politically charged crime drama from a filmmaker who remains relatively underlooked outside of France, which makes it a perfect fit for the label. That's gonna be a good one. And lastly, Radiance also included an issue of their Dirty Art House magazine, which they occasionally throw into their shipments. And as I've said, this is actually the first one I've received since subscribing this year. Physically, it's pretty nice. It's printed on thick, sturdy paper stock and feels more substantial than your typical magazine. This issue features Yorgos Lanthimos on the cover, and the killing of the sacred deer is featured on the back. The theme this time is family values, and the magazine features essays on films like Happiness, Julie and Donkey Boy, I Stand Alone, Ana y los Lobos, and The Killing of a Sacred Deer. So it's definitely leaning into some challenging and unconventional cinema, rather than more mainstream art house fare. Now, I will say, while it looks great visually, I found the actual reading experience a little tough. The text is fairly small, it's printed on dark red paper, and the finish on the pages catches the light in a way that gives it a kind of a glare. Maybe it's just my aging eyes, but I found myself wishing it was a little bit easier to read. Yeah, it definitely creates a glare. Still, it's a nice bonus to throw into a shipment. It's not the reason anyone subscribes, but it's a cool extra. Another example of Radiance trying to create a broader film culture around the label instead of just releasing discs. So yeah, that wraps up the June US subscription from Radiance. Again, a smaller shipment this month, but honestly a pretty interesting one. Both films are connected to Jean-Pierre Macchi, but they seem to approach very different subjects and styles, from institutional drama to political crime thriller. And then there was the bonus issue of Dirty Art House, which was a nice little extra, even if I do need a brighter lamp to get through it. Or would it be a dimmer one? Alright guys, thanks for watching as always. Don't forget about that Barnes & Noble sale. Let me know what you pick up, and we'll see you on the next one.